everybody, welcome to Tier 1 Interventions, where we work on helping you gain the core in your classroom. I am Cheri Dotter, your classroom coach. That's Cheri with a C and Dot with a stutter. I'm here today with Jonily Zupanzik, your instructional coach on mathematics, and we are here to help you learn how to deliver your math instruction in a very unique way. Today, we're going to talk about the pain problem. Jonily, get us started.
Hey everybody, I'm Jay-Z in the house, Jonily Zupanzik, and Tier 1 Interventions is, as Cheri said, strengthening your core regular classroom. So this is for specifically the classroom teacher partnering with the intervention specialist, instructional coach, curriculum leader, principal, special service provider, occupational therapist, speech therapist. How can kids get exactly what they need in the Tier 1 core regular general classroom? Too often we have kids leaving the room to be pulled out for small group Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention. By today, in 2025, the amount of pull out that is needed or necessary, so to speak, is astronomical. We need to either avoid or severely reduce the need to pull students out of the Tier 1 regular core general classroom. The strategy for doing this is strengthening the core. We must unlearn, relearn, and rethink how we operate in the regular classroom, how instruction is presented and delivered so that kids, all kids, regardless of disability, ability, any type of spectrum, neurodiversity, neurodivergence, whatever students are dealing with internally or externally, public, private, and any school should be able to meet their needs in the Tier 1 regular general core classroom. We can do this with Tier 1 Interventions Mathematics, Mastery Math, based on 12 reference tasks. Reference tasks are such that they are presented the same dirty dozen every single year, the exact same tasks from preschool through high school. They are presented multi times a year and every year, and the complexity increases over time.
Let's tune in to part 2 of the background behind the pain problem.
They never get as far as the gifted child's thinking. The gifted child never gets to go above and beyond, but with reference tasks and our instructional delivery strategy, we're able to do that.
So, this is a great activity for this coming Easter season. So, if you're using the 120 chart, and the picture that I show you, use these stickers. They have the white on the one side, they're the foam stickers. So they're a millimeter or so thick. Here's pink one. So all those were the eggs in the foamy stickers that you can get at Michael's.
But don't take the sticker back off, because
don't take the sticker back off. I just happen to have a whole bag of them. And I was trying, so this all came down from something that I was trying to use an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper to demonstrate something to one of my students. And I was like getting so frustrated. I went, hold on a second. And I came back and I created the 2-page and then moved on. And while I was doing this, I had the most amazing experience with an adult. My husband was watching me work, and I introduced him to the 120 chart and how it helps kids with counting, and he's genius.
Welcome.
So he actually helped me pull out 120 purple ones rather than having them mix and match the colors when I was doing that project. So this is a great opportunity to utilize a 120 chart coming up here in the Easter season.
And I'm going to put locker problem on our board, even though that was just an aside today. We also have a module for the entire locker problem. But what I also want to say that in our 120 chart module and some of the other modules, oftentimes we will use a larger 120 chart and cut off the horizontal rows and move them beside each other so that you can see the 120 chart become a linear horizontal number line or a linear vertical number line. And it's important to do both because coordinate plane is the combination of a vertical number line and a horizontal number line. So we want kids to see them separately, each individual. But what we also do so that kids can cut and have a better accessibility with fine motor and cutting is we make the 120 charts bigger, but we also make the lines thicker so that, look, this is what they do in occupational therapy as an intervention, but we can just provide these adaptations in the regular classroom. They are already ready-made in our Tier 1 interventions program. Sarah, comment.
I have a question. And I hope that I don't think it was detrimental in any way, but just curious your thought on it. So I have a lot of teachers who work with their special education students who are really strongly attached to the multiplication table. We've talked about 120 chart, and I have a few people who are moving in that direction. I do love what Cheri said about having the students almost create one of those with a count by 2 or a count by 4 to create a multiplication reference sheet, if you will, for each of our like count bys. But I was also wondering, so we had a conversation one day and I was like, if you're going to use the multiplication chart, maybe you could turn it into, because I know something you say a lot is number as shape. And I said, maybe instead of just, oh, what's 3 times 5, and just looking at that intersection point, okay, my answer is 15. Could you have them like draw the rectangles that like encompasses that area in a sense, right? So 3 by 5 versus 5 by 3, then I'm getting still that 15, but that they look different depending on like the lead factor, if that makes sense.
You make beautiful sense. And let me go back to my kinder story for the 120 chart. So when we did the skip counting by 8s and the kids went back, because that's where we stopped the story, because then we have these adaptations for the 120 chart. So remember, kids are at carpet, we're doing the 8s, we're doing the whisper counting. We come back, they go to their seats, they get 120 charts, and on one chart, their goal is to skip count by 8s. Now, the kinder teacher, I told her before we started, just trust me. Famous last words. I said, we're going to have kids skip count by 8s today. And she's, there is no way, but I'd like to see this happen. Okay, so they go back. They pick a 120. They all have a paper. So as they go back, I start to talk quieter and they just get to work. And some kids are like, I don't know what to do. So then I start to like mini lesson at smaller groups because they're in table groups. This is just some instructional technique. Sarah, I'm going to get to all of your questions. This is just some instructional technique. I go to smaller groups. I talk a little softer, but not too soft, because then the 2 groups beside them start to listen. So I'll mini lesson at one table group and it's really at 3 because some of the kids are like, what's she saying? So I'll go to one table group. I won't try to do this whole class because I just released them. Okay. I don't make every single table get on task at the same time. Okay. So I'm at one table group and I'm like, okay, guys, we're going to circle the numbers on our quick dot pattern when we were doing 8s. How much is 1/8? 1. I'm like, oh, let's look at the quick dot again. How much is 1/8? Let's whisper again. 1, 2, 3. I just make them do it. And they're like, 1/8 is 8. I'm like, perfect. What's the first number we're going to circle here? 8. Do you guys know what an 8 looks like? Oh, we know what an 8 looks like. And they were fine. They circled 8 on the 120 chart. And these are even the small versions. And nobody had any issue. Then I said, okay, how much are 2 8s? 9. You know what? You guys are so amazing. So amazing. Let's look at our quick dot again. How much is 1/8? 8. Okay. So let's whisper with me. 9, 10, 16. And I said, perfect. So how much are 2 8s? 16. Now, this is what we talk about as rote counting without meaning. I don't care that kids know what 16 means, but by doing it with this quick dot pattern, they start to understand quantity, value, and magnitude and size of number. So we're taking rote counting to a little more sensory level. So I said, do you guys know what a 16 looks like? And the one kid's, oh, is it a 1 and a 6 or a 6 and a 1? I'm like, it's 1 6, 1 6. So I just tell them these things so that I'm like, oh, how much are 3 8s? And then one kid's 24. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And the teacher's, oh, you were right. So then I'm like, I don't know, let's check him. Our loud number was 16. Here we go. So, and now remember, I'm doing this with one table group, but the 2 table groups beside them are listening in. So then, and then 2 other table groups are going bat crap crazy, but who cares? Okay. Y'all, if we focus so much, please hear this. If we focus so much on compliance, completion, we will never create good complex math experiences that are conceptual and contextual. Not 100% of kids need to be 100% on task 100% of the time. So stop. I'm going to get to those kids. Look, they're not throwing chairs. They're not dancing on desks. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about here. They're talking about how, hey, your right pocket, the white part's out on your jeans. Here, let me help you. I'm going to stick it back in. Don't touch me. That's what's going on up there. Just let it go. Let me finish this. All right. 16's our loud number. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 20, 24. You were right. 24 is the loud number. What is a 24? 2 and a 4. All right. Then what I do is at that one table group, I leave a copy that I made. See, I have a copy of the images of the quick dots. I leave it in the middle of that one table group, not the other 2. And then I go up to, there's 2 other table groups. I go up to one of the table groups that were much more off task. And then I do that same exact mini lesson there. So this is how I facilitate and support without telling kids what to do. I help them figure out what to do. When they figure it out, they learn it. When I tell them, they only hear it. So as they're doing this, now kids are equipped with this whisper counting technique. I mini lesson it twice. Other kids pick up on it. And now they can do this iteration and repeated reasoning with any number of 8s. And I can just leave them alone and I can let them mess up. They're all busy and on task. They're not all accurate, but I'm not going to fix that because I need a break. Okay? The pocket outside the jeans conversation was too much for me. Okay? I finally reeled them in. It doesn't matter if they're accurate. They're in kindergarten. Okay? So, we're at the
Before you go
120.
too further.
Yes, go ahead.
So you were talking about adaptations. I'm bugging in the adaptations yet
Love
again
it.
on us. One of the things that you will find in the Tier 1 interventions work course in that particular module for the 120 chart, we've created a worksheet similar to this that has all of the spaces in between thickened. So why do we do that? If we have kiddos that are struggling with cutting skills, but research is showing that if you give them thicker lines so that they can cut through the black area and be successful, they're going to engage more in the classroom. So we can even make them thicker if we have to, but for the case of trying to get it on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, we made them that thick. And we also made the numbers a little bit bigger so kids can see them. So I wanted to share that with you, that we have a complete 120 chart in the course. So if anybody is out there that's listening to this podcast and wants to know more about all of these adaptations that we've created already for you, give us a buzz at info@disabilitylabs.com, and we will get back to you and we will share with you more information about how to access this course called the 120 chart. You're muted now.
The entire course is made up of 12 reference tasks, just like the ones we've mentioned. And K-12, preschool through high school, math, standards all fall into each of these 12 reference tasks. We've simplified the process. The entire Tier 1 interventions course, which is the Mastery Math method, is an adaptive, condensed curriculum that can be used parallel to your current textbook curriculum resources. So we teach you how to use your resources and deliver them in these strategic, brain-based technique way. Just a little add-on there for what Cheri said. Now, so I'm in my kindergarten class. We do the quick dot fact. We do the 120 chart. Kids are going and going, and they're just starting to learn about skip counting by 8. Now I'm going to pause for a moment because then we did another quick dot, and the other skip counting number we did that day was 12s. Yeah. The teacher was like, I thought 8 was a stretch. Now you're doing 12s. I'm going to tell you about that in a moment. Now let's back up for a minute. I'm telling you all this and I'm sharing my kindergarten story because this is exactly what rate looks like at kindergarten or even second grade. You could mimic this whole thing at second grade or third grade or at 8th grade, but it would go a lot faster. You're going to do things a lot quicker. So I'm going to pause that kinder story and I'm going to go to one of Sarah's questions. And that is, as we are looking at numbers and trying to make sense of numbers and see numbers, another one of our reference tasks is called making rectangles. The way that we can improve number sense and math fact fluency is to help students see numbers as shape. And that's one of the things that I do with the quick dots. And I try to make many of the shapes a basic rectangle. Rectangle is the most simple of shapes. Triangle is fairly complex, and the circle is the most complex shape mathematically and with number. So we try to have students see number as rectangles or combinations of rectangles or extensions of rectangles. This in and of itself builds single-digit multiplication fact fluency prior to 3rd grade when it needs to be mastered. The way that we're currently teaching multiplication facts, kids still don't have them mastered by 7th and 8th grade or even in high school. So we just have to agree it's not working. We're telling you what does work. So one of the other things that I have students do, Sarah, you talked about the multiplication chart. I like a blank multiplication chart, a multiplication chart that doesn't have any numbers there. We know that if students can see number as shape, specifically as rectangle, it starts to connect and associate that experience, which leads to long-term learning, an increase in memory, and retention of content. So if I have a blank multiplication chart and I've got 5 times 3, and I outline 5 times 3, I actually have a rectangle that is a 5 by 3, and we call this the dimension chart. Yesterday in my kindergarten class, we began to make squares, which is a type of rectangle. They used blocks, and I talked about the dimensions. A square, the dimensions, meaning how tall, how long, have to be equal and the same number. So we can just count the number of blocks here, and in the final connector block, this connector block right here, we can write the number 15 because The 15 shows that my array number for this rectangle, the number of unit blocks, is 15. Hence, 3 times 5 is 15. Hence, what is my skip counting number? It's either 5 3 times, or it's 3 5 times. So another one of our modules goes through the entire progression of making rectangles. And this is one example of how we can do that to improve number sense and make shapes. Thoughts, comments, questions on that?
I want to just add to that. I had my kids do. Now, Sarah, I don't know. It was one of the things, and I ended up having my kids do it. I had 2 dice. So I'm not sure if my kids did it. I know my first, second, and third graders did it. We had 2 dice, and you can look it up. It was a multiplication page. It said multiplication, and the page didn't have numbers on top and bottom like ours did. But when they rolled the dice, they could take, like you say, 3 or 5, and they could go across 3, down 5. But that's how we did it. And what they did is, and I did it with them, and they colored in their box because we colored as the OT. So we colored in the box, and I told them they could place it wherever they wanted. They were making their rectangles, and I said, "Oh, 3 times 5, what is that?" And they counted out the box, and they counted their numbers. Those that didn't know it, and my older kids that didn't know it would tell me the numbers. But I did it as coloring. But I said it also looks like a Tetris. You know what I'm saying? So they were trying to fit in whatever we need to roll 1 times 3 because I can fit in a long rectangle. They were trying to tell me what they needed. But 2 dice, roll it out, pick the number, put it where you want it. So that's how I did it with my kids.
And when you roll the dice, let's say we rolled a 3 and a 5, we did this. Here's my next facilitation question. What other box will 15 go in? There's another place where 15 can go because I can either do 5 on top and 3 on the side, or 3 on top and 5 on the side. So the other box that 15 can go is here. So we're constantly creating in K1-2, we're building with blocks. I left this out, but we're building with blocks, rectangles, and then we're charting and modeling the rectangle we build, and then putting the array number, meaning how many blocks did it take to make a 5 by 3 or a 3 by 5. That's our array number. And then in third grade, all of the array numbers turn into, oh, that number is our area. Do you see the progression of associations and connections to rectangles, understanding number, using skip counting? This is how we teach rate in primary. That's the whole point of this. And we can use these tasks to do other follow-up thoughts, comments.
This is just like maybe a bit of a critique or a point where I'm like, ooh, I wish this was a little better. I don't know. I think Cheri said you have that PDF in the course. What I tried to look for though, because if I want to do square, is like square blocks for each number so that then they can, like you, to your point, if I want to move to squares, then they're going to see that square shape compared to the rectangle. Yeah.
Beautiful. And I will get one of those templates made. Sarah, you are a rock star. Now, you just know it's not going to show up anytime soon because you'll have to email me. And
there's, I mean, there are like free ones that you can like Google and download or whatever. So no shade on getting that done. That's not, I'm just saying.
No, but that is top priority at this point because that makes a good point. Cheri, the connection to centimeter grid, if it's actually on centimeter squares, then we can have physical centimeter blocks to go on top of it. Do you see why we need each other? Because all of these adaptations just increases the complexity and the rigor of the mathematics, being able to use these manipulatives in a way that is going to create the foundation for so many of our math standards. Other thoughts?
I'm going to add now, here's more accessibility. You take them to the gym and you do your 120 chart in the gym and do it big and physical. Let the kids, if they want to do lockers open and close, you stand and squat, however you want to do it, but you can do it in the big physical modality as or come up with big thing. I don't know. You come up with, you got teachers, get all the classrooms in there together, do the whole thing, however you want to do it, but do it in the big physicality kind of thing, because some kids need that physical mode to learn things as well.
Let's get physical. I want to get physical. Let's get.
Teresa, you got her singing. Oh no.
Hey, there's always a song breakout. Cheri, Teresa, talk to us a little bit about the cognitive, the neuroscience aspect of physical movement and why it's necessary.
We have hidden senses. I bet you thought we only had 5. We actually have several more. And those hidden senses that we have are called proprioception. You may have heard that word somewhere along the line, but don't really understand what it means. There's also vestibular, there's interoception, and a lot of people use the word kinesthetic, but don't really understand what it truly means. So let's go back. Proprioception really is a sensation inside your joints that tells your brain what that joint is doing. So when we're holding a pencil, the little joints inside your fingers, as you're moving to write letters, is telling your brain how to move that finger to make that particular letter. Kids with disabilities lack that sense. We need to find other ways to get that deep pressure into that joint so that they can understand what to do to get that letter written. When we add movement, like Teresa was talking about, we add vestibular, which is generally any movement pattern that moves our head around. What the vestibular system is doing is trying to keep our head perpendicular to the floor, to the ground. That's why when you get off a roller coaster, your head's going, I don't know where I am. And you're walking all over the place for that first moment or two till your brain and your eyes and your ears and your brain all go, oh, this is where the ground is again. This is where I'm supposed to be. Gymnasts learn how to negotiate the vestibular system in a hyper wow way, because they're able to flip themselves on all different kinds of directions that kind of take the brain to a new level. So they learn that. A lot of sports will do that with kids, and that's why movement is so essential, because they can take that movement that they have and that improvement in that nervous system, bring it back to the classroom, and they excel better in the classroom. I also mentioned interoception, and that is like intuition. It's that feeling inside that tells you when something's not right. There's more to the story, but let's just go with that simple explanation of it. We talk about this periodically here on Tier 1 Interventions podcast, but today it really is hitting home because we're able to take the mathematics, the sensory stuff, and we're putting it all together, and we're showing you how the whole picture works today. It's a real blessing. Thank you, Jonily.
No, this is really beautiful. Oh, go ahead.
I was just trying to attach to that, saying the kids that are not, like you've always talked about, the kids that have that innate math, the kids that do not have the innate math need multiple inputs. So because they don't have that, because they need that multiple inputs, some kids need to see it and hear it and touch it. That's why we need to address those. They may be smart kids in other ways, but they just need extra inputs. And then we have the special ed kids who need, and then they need extra exposures. So they may get it from the extra exposures that we do. And that's why we, as the OTs and the PTs, have to give them that extra exposure and come up with clever ways of doing that. And in my, again, research, the movement and math come together, and that's another reason why you want to give some extra movement with the math.
And this is really beautiful. This is a later module in the course for a lot of reason, because what ends up happening is, see, in order to do the paint problem, kids need all of these other experiences before the paint problem. However, what I'm going to tell you is paint problems should be one of our tasks the first 15 days. So that means in the first 14 days of school, kids need experiences with all of this. So when we talk about first 15 days of math, they get their first exposure of experiences. Now, as Teresa made a great point, kids need extra exposures, interactions over time. Our truly gifted kids only need 1 to 2 interactions before they have forever learning. Our bright kids, whose parents think they're gifted, they still need 5 to 7 exposures, but our most struggling kids might need 40 to 100 to 200 exposures before they learn it before it's ingrained in them, before it's lifetime learning. And so the way typical traditional mathematics is set up to be taught and delivered, there is no way to get extra exposures. There's no way. So this is where I say we have to unlearn, relearn, and rethink how we're delivering math instruction. And we do that in 15-day cycles. We take each of our reference tasks. You might pick 5. There are 12. And we expect Kirk. We just had a comment here. Isn't homework extra exposure? Yeah, don't get me started on that nonsense. Anywho, so to get extra exposures, we think in 15-day cycles through our math year. So anything that is absolutely essential, I'm telling you today, the only thing that's essential is rate. What I'm doing today is giving you all of these examples of what rate looks like. Kids need exposures to quick dots, 120 chart, locker problem, making rectangles, seeing number as shape, blank dimension charts, blank multiplication charts, array numbers, everything I've already mentioned, they need exposures to, I would say, every 15 days of the school year. Because once we put it out, there are so many levels to it that as they get these constant exposures, our struggling kids get learning that sticks, and our highly gifted kids get to increase their complexity every time they see the new exposure. The goal is different for different students. And then because the reference tasks are the same, every year we give the same exposures to those tasks and continue to increase the complexity. So it's a very unique, counterintuitive, brain-based cognitive system of delivery of math instruction. If I go back to my kindergarten story, we did the 120, we did the quick dots, the 120 chart. 120 chart has a lot of uses. We talked about the locker problem as an extension use of the 120 chart, making rectangles, seeing number as shape. What I next did with these kindergartners, and you guys, this was all in 35 minutes. 35 minutes, I did all this, okay? What I did next with the kindergartners is I said, we're gonna do another quick dot. We're gonna do another one. I said, okay, here we go. How many dots? Raise a quiet hand. Boom. Okay, then we go through the process below. I'm gonna skip all that. Now on your 120 chart, you are going to, instead of skip counting by 8s, you're gonna pick a second 120 chart, and we're gonna skip count by 12s. What shape is this? Now, some of the kids were like, oh, that's a square this time. So we said, okay, wait a minute. How many dots tall? 3. How many dots long? 4. Oh, it's 3 the same as 4? Is that the same number? They're like, no. I'm like, good, because it's not. In order to have a square, you must have the same tall and the same long. You must have the same number for dimensions. You must have an equal. So I use all these different words so they can hear it. They're not note-taking on it. They're just getting exposed to all these words over and over again, okay? Don't make a big deal of it. They don't have to master it. It's kindergarten. We just use these exposure languages so that kids hear it again and again. So then I sing my song. Okay. So we whisper count and we do the whole thing we did with 8s. I'm not going to get into that. But then after that, I was like, we're going to sing a song. We're going to learn a song. Ready? Here we go. 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, 84, 96, 108, 120, 132. Let's do one more. It's 144. Now, when you hear this on the audio, okay, the kids are gonna be like, but it's kinder. We start the 12 song in kinder. We sing it multiple times a year. They start to pick up on it. Rote counting with no meaning. That is exactly how we enhance the opportunity to understand rate later on. Okay. And then we sang it again, da, da, da. So I'm like, okay, that's it. Moving on. The last thing that we're going to do today, my little peeps, okay? Last thing we're going to do today is we saw a lot of numbers. We skip counted by numbers, and we saw these numbers as rectangles. Here's the final thing we're going to explore. I want to know what numbers we could make that would make squares. And I had kids predict and guess, and then I gave them blocks and I said, your only goal right now is to make squares. Because there's this pizza company and they only make square pizzas. Boom. And then you can hear on the audio how I facilitated it. The point of all that is I purposefully wanted to give kids as many exposures to different reference tasks in 35 minutes at the primary level at a high poverty school with students that have many issues and struggles, and they engaged beautifully. And on the audio, you can hear what they're coming up with mathematically, and it's absolutely uncharacteristic of a kindergarten classroom. Even if you are a 9th grade Algebra 1 teacher, I want you to listen to this kindergarten audio because you are going to pick up on these techniques. Are you going to present it the same way I present it? No, please. Are you going to talk the same way I'm going to talk? No, please. Are you going to do the same tasks? Yes, please. The 8s and the 12s and the quick dots and the 120 charts, but it's going to happen much quicker for these older students. Thoughts, comments, questions before we deliberately and intentionally jump to part 2. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the functional pieces, which we've already done, but I want to make it a point to be like, why are we doing all of this? And then I'm going to make a functional connection to rate. But any thoughts, comments, questions to close out part 1?